It started with the missing money. I had saved up for months, carefully budgeting every penny to buy something nice for my son's birthday. But when I reached into my drawer, the envelope with the cash was gone. I didn't think much of it at first until my daughter-in-law Sophia pointed at me in front of the family and accused me of taking it. Why would I steal from my own son? I asked, stunned. But the damage had been done. Everyone believed her. Everyone. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just a mother-in-law with a broken heart. I was a woman on a mission, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when I first noticed the money was gone. For months, I had been diligently setting aside a little bit here and there from my modest pension and the small income I made from selling my handmade quilts. My son Alex was turning 30, a milestone birthday. After everything he and we had been through losing his father too young, the subsequent struggles with finding his career path, the quiet pain of his recent divorce, I wanted to give him something truly special. Something to show him that no matter how hard life got, no matter how many times he felt knocked down, his mother would always be there, his steadfast anchor. I had decided to buy him a new professional-grade camera, something he'd wistfully mentioned wanting for ages, but with his own financial strains could never justify purchasing for himself. I kept the money in a plain white envelope tucked away securely, or so I thought, in the bottom drawer of my bedroom desk beneath a pile of old linens. But when I reached for it that morning, planning to make the final count before heading to the camera store, the envelope was gone. At first, a wave of mild confusion washed over me. I told myself I must have moved it and forgotten. Maybe I'd tucked it into a different drawer for even safer keeping. Perhaps it had slipped behind the desk or fallen amongst the clutter of my sewing supplies. I spent the better part of an hour searching, a growing unease coiling in my stomach. But as the days passed and every conceivable hiding spot was meticulously checked and rechecked, a grim certainty began to settle in. I hadn't misplaced it. The money, nearly $800, a small fortune to me, was well and truly gone. The sense of panic that hit me then was immediate and sharp, not just because of the financial loss significant as it was, but because I felt violated, profoundly so. It wasn't just a collection of bills, it represented months of careful planning, of small sacrifices, of foregoing little comforts for myself. It was the physical manifestation of my love and effort for Alex. And as the shock began to recede, a cold, unwelcome suspicion began to creep into my mind. There was only one person who had been in and out of my room recently who knew I kept little treasures tucked away, who had the opportunity. My daughter-in-law, Sophia. Sophia had moved in with us into my home 2 years ago when she and Alex had gotten married. At first, I was genuinely happy to have her. She was charming, initially helpful, and seemed to fit into our quiet family life with an easy grace. Alex was smitten, and his happiness was mine. But as time wore on, I began to notice little things, subtle shifts in her behavior in the household dynamic. Small ways she would overstep boundaries, her casual disregard for house rules I'd maintained for years. Her growing influence over Alex, a slow, insidious chipping away at his own judgment. The way she would always manage to convince him that her opinions, her desires, were the only ones that truly mattered, often at the expense of his own or mine. I didn't voice my concerns. I thought perhaps it was normal part of the adjustment of newlyweds finding their rhythm. I didn't want to be perceived as the meddling, controlling mother-in-law cliché. I just wanted Alex to be happy. So I kept my thoughts to myself, offered polite smiles, and did my best to maintain a peaceful, harmonious home. But things began to change more noticeably. Sophia's habits grew more pronounced, her sense of entitlement more apparent. She would spend money freely, Alex's money mostly on things we didn't need, impulsive online purchases that would arrive in a steady stream of boxes. She splurged on expensive clothes and beauty treatments for herself without a second thought, while Alex was working longer hours to cover their increasing expenses. Meanwhile, I was cutting corners diligently, pinching pennies from my own limited budget, trying to save for my son's special birthday gift. And now my savings, the fruit of all that careful frugality, were gone. A few days later, the accusation I dreaded but somehow expected came, though not in the way I envisioned. It was during a small family gathering. Alex's sister Ella was over for dinner. I hadn't mentioned the missing money to anyone yet, still grappling with my suspicions, still hoping for some other explanation. We were discussing Alex's upcoming birthday, and I mentioned I was still deciding on the perfect gift. That's when Sophia chimed in, her voice laced with a strange, almost pitying tone. "Oh, Maria," she said, addressing me directly. Her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Speaking of money, I've been meaning to ask. Alex mentioned you were saving up for his camera. Did you perhaps need to borrow some from the household fund recently? Because I noticed quite a bit missing from the emergency cash jar we keep in the kitchen." I stared at her, stunned into silence. The audacity of it. She was preemptively accusing me of taking money, diverting any suspicion from herself. "What are you talking about?" "Sophia," I finally managed, my voice trembling slightly. "I haven't touched any household fund. The money I was saving was my own, and it's gone missing from my room." Sophia's eyes widened further, a theatrical display of shock. "Oh, Maria, you mean you think someone stole it from you?" "Here in our home." Then she looked at Alex, her expression turning sorrowful. "Alex, darling, your mother thinks someone in this house is a thief, and now the household money is missing too. Oh, this is dreadful." Ella looked uncomfortable. Alex looked confused, then concerned. "Mom, what's going on? You lost your savings, and Sophia, what about the household money?" Before I could explain further, Sophia delivered her masterstroke. She sighed deeply, a look of profound reluctance on her face. "Well, I didn't want to say anything to cause trouble, but Maria has been a little forgetful lately, and she's been under a lot of stress. I saw her near the kitchen jar yesterday looking flustered, and her envelope. Well, if it's gone, perhaps she misplaced it and then borrowed from the jar, intending to pay it back, and simply forgot." She looked at me, then her eyes filled with false sympathy. "It's okay, Maria. We understand. Just tell us if you needed it." The implication was clear. She was painting me as a confused, possibly senile old woman who was both careless and a thief. My own son, Alex, looked at me with a new, worried expression. Ella looked down at her plate. "Sophia." I said, my voice dangerously low. "I did not misplace my money. And I certainly did not take any money from your kitchen jar. My savings were stolen from my bedroom. But who would do that? Maria." Sophia pressed her voice, dripping with innocence. "Only family has access here. Unless you spent it and forgot. Or perhaps you needed it for something urgent and felt you couldn't ask." The insinuation hung heavy in the air, that I, his mother, would steal from him or lie about it. And because of Sophia's carefully planted seeds of doubt about my forgetfulness, I could see the belief wavering in Alex's eyes. "Why would I steal from my own son?" I asked, my voice choked with hurt and disbelief. But the damage had been done. Doubt once planted is a poisonous weed. That evening, after Ella had left and an uncomfortable silence had descended upon the house, I was making dinner when Sophia walked into the kitchen. She casually looked over my shoulder as I stirred the pot on the stove. "Smells good," she said, her voice light airy, as if she had no care in the world, as if she hadn't just subtly assassinated my character in front of my children. I nodded curtly, not trusting myself to speak. I could feel her eyes on me assessing, but I kept my gaze focused on the simmering sauce. I didn't want her to see the turmoil, the anger, the deep aching hurt in my face. "Do you need any help with anything?" she asked, her tone just a little too sweet, a little too solicitous. I looked up then, meeting her eyes. She was standing a little too close, a smug, almost imperceptible tilt to her lips, as if she was waiting for me to break, to confess to something I hadn't done. My heart was pounding in my chest. The suspicion, no, the certainty rose inside me like bile. "No, I'm fine," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "Thanks." She didn't push further. She just nodded, that little smile still playing on her lips, and left the room, humming softly to herself. But I knew. In that moment, with chilling clarity, I knew. It was her. She had taken my money. And she was trying to frame me to make me look incompetent, perhaps even to drive a wedge between me and Alex, so she could have him and his resources all to herself. What they didn't know was that I wasn't just a mother-in-law with a broken heart. I was a woman on a mission, and I wasn't about to let her get away with it. The steal was just the beginning of her downfall. I spent the next week in a state of quiet, simmering fury, a silent observer in my own home. I didn't confront Sophia directly, not yet. I had learned long ago through painful experience that acting out of raw anger rarely leads to the desired result. It only gives the other person ammunition. I needed a plan, a strategy, and I would execute it with precision and patience. But more than anything, I needed to ensure that my son Alex would understand. That was the most delicate part. I didn't want him to think I was maliciously trying to tear his marriage apart out of spite or jealousy. I needed to show him the truth, the whole unvarnished truth in a way he couldn't deny. I started by documenting everything. Every subtle interaction with Sophia, every dismissive comment she made, every moment that felt off, every new unexplained purchase she flaunted. I pulled receipts from the recycling bin for her frequent online shopping sprees, designer shoes, expensive handbags, gadgets she used once and then discarded. Things she had bought with Alex's hard-earned money, things our household budget certainly didn't need. I kept a mental and then a written note of the times she had been overly demanding, expecting me to drop everything to cater to her whims, treating me less like a mother-in-law and more like an unpaid servant. It became clear she hadn't just stolen my savings. She had been systematically using me, using my kindness, my desire for peace to further her own selfish needs and desires. The real bombshell, however, the piece of evidence that would seal her fate, came a few days later, quite by accident. I noticed Sophia's phone lying unattended on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower singing loudly and off-key. It was a small window of opportunity, a lapse in her usual vigilance. My heart pounded. I knew it was wrong, an invasion of privacy, but the stakes were too high. My relationship with my son, my own integrity was on the line. I didn't hesitate. I picked it up. My fingers fumbling slightly and swiped it open thankfully. In her arrogance, she hadn't bothered to set up a passcode. The messages were there plain as day under a chat with someone I didn't recognize, someone she referred to as K, not just about the money she had taken from my drawer, got the cash for that weekend trip, babe, old lady will never know, but about other things, more insidious things, lies she had told Alex about me, manipulations. She had been actively working to isolate Alex from me, complaining about my interference, suggesting I was trying to control their lives, even hinting that I was becoming a financial burden. It was a calculated campaign to discredit me in her husband's eyes. I felt a cold rage settle deep in my bones. I quickly, carefully took photos of the most damning messages with my own phone, my hands shaking so much the first few were blurry. I couldn't just let this go on. She needed to be exposed not just as a thief, but as a malicious, manipulative liar. But I had to make sure the timing was perfect. I needed to present this evidence at the right moment in the right way when Alex would be forced to listen, forced to see the woman he married for who she truly was. A week later, the perfect opportunity presented itself almost as if orchestrated by fate. Alex, still largely oblivious, but sensing the growing tension in the house, had planned a family dinner for Sophia's birthday. It was supposed to be a special night, a celebration for her, a chance for us all to come together and show her how much we supposedly appreciated her. But instead, it became the night I would reveal everything. The night the quiet mother-in-law finally found her voice. I called Alex into the living room about an hour before Sophia was due back from her birthday pampering session at a spa. He had a big, hopeful grin on his face, clearly excited about the evening he had planned, eager for things to feel normal and happy again. I watched him for a moment, my heart aching for the pain I was about to inflict, but knowing it was a necessary pain. Alex. I began, my voice softer than I felt. There's something you need to know. Something very important about Sophia. He frowned immediately, his smile fading, replaced by a wary, defensive look. What's wrong, Mom? Are you going to start on Sophia again? Why are you always so serious when it comes to her? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to be the one to shatter his illusions, to tear his relationship apart, but I had no choice. Not anymore. My silence was enabling her. Sophia has been taking money from me, Alex, from my savings, for months now, and it's not just the money she's been lying to you. Lying about me, using you, manipulating you. You need to know the truth about the woman you married. His eyes narrowed and he took a physical step back as if my words were a blow. What are you talking about? Sophia would never do that. She loves me. You're just trying to cause problems between us because you're jealous or you don't like her. Alex, I have been nothing but kind to her, welcomed her into our home, into our family. I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of sorrow and righteous anger. I have done everything in my power to make her feel welcome, to support your marriage. But she's been taking advantage of my kindness, of your trust. And now I have proof she's using you, trying to turn you against me to get what she wants. I reached into the large manila envelope I had prepared and pulled out the carefully organized documents, the bank statements showing my withdrawals for the savings, the receipts for Sophia's extravagant purchases, the damning screenshots of her text messages, and placed them methodically on the coffee table in front of him. Read it, Alex, I said softly, but with an undeniable firmness. Read it all, then tell me I'm trying to cause problems. Alex stared at the pile of papers for a long, silent moment, his face unreadable, his jaw tight. I could see the internal conflict warring in his eyes, his loyalty to his wife, his innate trust in his mother. He didn't speak for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly, hesitantly, he picked up the first document, the photo of Sophia's text message about my stolen money, and began to read. The silence in the room was unbearable, broken only by the rustle of paper as he moved from one damning piece of evidence to the next. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird, but I couldn't look away. I had to see this through. For him, for myself. Finally, after what seemed like an age, Alex put the last paper down. His face was pale, ashen, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't expected, something that gave me a sliver of hope. Not just shock, but a dawning, horrified guilt. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Mom, he whispered. His voice strained raw with disbelief and a nascent anger directed not at me, but at the truth laid bare before him. I didn't want to hurt you, Alex, I said, my own voice thick with unshed tears. I didn't want to be the one to tear apart your marriage, to break your heart. But I couldn't stay silent any longer. She was escalating. I had to protect you. And I had to protect myself from her lies. Just then, the front door opened and Sophia walked into the room, her expression bright and eager, a false, dazzling smile plastered on her face. What's going on, you two? She asked, her tone cheerful, oblivious. Is everything ready for my birthday dinner? I'm starving. She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw Alex standing there, his face like thunder. The damning documents spread out on the coffee table in front of him. Her smile faltered, then vanished. What is this? She asked, her voice suddenly small, trying to mask the fear that instantly flashed in her eyes. Alex didn't look at me. He looked directly at her, his expression hardening into something I'd rarely seen from my usually easygoing son. Explain this, Sophia, he said, his voice dangerously cold, each word dropping like a chip of ice. Explain what this is all about. Now. Sophia stood frozen, her face draining of color as she realized there was no escape. The carefully constructed walls of her deception were crumbling around her. The truth in all its ugly detail was out. Her eyes darted between me standing silently by the window and Alex, who was now radiating a cold fury. The room was thick with tension, the air heavy with unspoken words and shattered illusions. I could almost see the wheels turning frantically in her head, her mind scrambling to concoct a plausible lie, a way to spin this to charm her way out as she always had. But there was nothing left to spin. The evidence was irrefutable, laid out in black and white and in the damning glow of her own text messages. I didn't mean for things to go this way, she finally stammered, her voice shaky, the confident, entitled facade she'd worn for months now completely gone, replaced by a desperate, cornered fear. I was trying to survive. You don't understand, Alex. Life has been so hard. Alex's jaw tightened, his fists clenching and unclenching at his sides. Trying to survive, he repeated, his voice dangerously low, incredulous. By stealing hundreds of dollars from my mother, the woman who opened her home to you. By systematically lying to me, your husband. By trying to turn me against my own family. Sophia opened her mouth to speak, to offer another flimsy excuse, but the words seemed to die in her throat. She was trapped, utterly and completely trapped. She knew it. I could see the fight drain out of her eyes, replaced by a dawning, panicked realization. The truth had shattered her carefully crafted image, and there was no way out. I had expected a confrontation, a denial, perhaps even tears and histrionics from Sophia. But what happened next wasn't anything I could have anticipated. Alex's sister Ella, who had arrived a few minutes earlier for the birthday dinner and had been quietly standing by the doorway, taking in the entire scene with wide, shocked eyes, finally stepped forward. Her voice when she spoke was calm, controlled, but it cut through the suffocating tension in the room like a surgeon's scalpel. "Mom," she said softly, her eyes meeting mine with a newfound understanding. "You were right all along, weren't you?" I looked at her in surprise, my heart clenching. "Ella." She nodded, her gaze never wavering from Sophia, who now looked even more diminished under Ella's steady scrutiny. "I didn't see it at first. I admit, I thought you were maybe being a little hard on her. I thought she was just trying to fit in, trying to be part of the family, maybe a bit clumsy about it. But now seeing this, I get it. I get why you've been so upset lately, why you've seemed so distant." I swallowed hard, a wave of emotion, relief, vindication, sorrow for my children, welling up inside me. "Ella, sweetheart, I didn't want to bring you into this. I never wanted to make you feel like you had to choose sides." But Ella shook her head firmly. "I wasn't choosing sides, Mom. I was just blind. I wanted to believe the best. I wanted Alex to be happy. But this isn't fine. It was never fine. I see that now." Sophia's face twisted with a desperate anger, and she snapped, her voice regaining a shred of its former sharpness. "Ella, don't listen to her. This is all a huge mistake. She's twisting things." But Ella simply stepped back from her, creating a physical distance that mirrored the emotional one. Her voice was firm, unwavering. "No, Sophia, it's not a mistake. The truth is right there on that table. You've been lying to us. You've been using us all along." The next few hours were a painful, chaotic blur. Sophia, realizing she had lost Ella as an ally, tried to leave to flee the confrontation. But I stood by the door, blocking her path. I wasn't about to let her simply walk away from the mess she had created without facing the full consequences of her actions. Alex, in his distress, called his father, my ex-husband, who came over ostensibly to mediate, though I knew his presence would likely only complicate matters further, given his history of siding with whoever seemed more powerful at the moment. Sophia tried to apologize then. She cried, she begged for forgiveness. She spun tales of a difficult past and financial desperation. But Alex, his heart clearly broken, but his eyes now chillingly clear, didn't want to hear it. He wasn't buying her performance anymore. "I can't believe I was so blind," he said, pacing the confines of our small living room like a caged lion. "How could I not see this? How could I let you do this to my own mother in my own home, to my family?" Her apologies were hollow, her excuses transparent, and I could see that Alex finally painfully knew it too. He didn't want to hear more lies. He wanted answers, explanations, but Sophia had none left that held any truth. I watched, a silent, sorrowful observer, as she was eventually forced to pack her bags, her carefully constructed pride shattered into a million pieces. She was leaving. I didn't need to say another word. She knew with a devastating finality that she had lost everything: Alex's love, the respect of his family, the comfortable life she had so deceitfully built for herself. She had gambled and she had lost spectacularly. That night, long after Sophia was gone, the house felt emptier, yet somehow lighter than it had in months. Alex sat on the couch, his head in his hands, staring blankly at the floor. Ella sat beside him, her arm around his shoulder, offering silent comfort. "I'm so sorry, Mom," Alex said quietly, his voice thick with shame and regret. "I should have trusted you. I should have listened to my gut. I should have seen it." I went to him, sat on his other side, and took his hand. "It's not your fault, Alex. You loved her. You wanted to believe in her, to build a life with her. You didn't deserve this. None of us did." Over the next few weeks, the aftermath of Sophia's profound betrayal played out in the harshest, most painful of ways. Alex was devastated not just by her deceit, but by the shattering realization that his judgment had been so thoroughly clouded, his emotions so expertly manipulated. But slowly, painstakingly, things began to heal. Alex and I grew closer than we had been in years, our bond forged anew in shared pain and truth. His relationship with Ella also deepened, their sibling connection strengthened by the ordeal. We talked openly, honestly, about everything, the hurt, the mistakes made, the trust that had been so brutally broken and would need to be carefully rebuilt, not just between us, but within ourselves. It wasn't easy, but we were in it together, a family unit reforged in the fires of betrayal. Sophia tried to contact Alex a few times in the initial weeks, tearful voicemails, pleading texts. But each time, with a resolve that made me proud, he blocked her number, deleted her messages. He wouldn't allow her to play with his emotions, to reel him back into her web of lies any longer. The facade had crumbled, and she possessed neither the materials nor the skill to rebuild it. Weeks later, cleaning out the last vestiges of her presence in the house, I came across a note from Sophia. She had left it tucked into a magazine in the living room, a final, almost pathetic attempt at something. "I'm sorry," it read, her handwriting surprisingly childlike. I was desperate. I got in over my head. I thought I could get away with it. I was wrong. I don't expect your forgiveness, Maria or Alex's, but I hope someday you can all find peace. The note didn't move me. The anger had long since dissipated, replaced by a weary, profound sense of done. She had made her choices consistently and selfishly, and now she had to live with them far away from us. A year later, our lives were calmer, the storms having passed. Alex was thriving in a new job he loved, his confidence slowly returning. Ella had graduated from college with honors and was excitedly planning her future. We had healed, not perfectly, not without scars, but together. Our little family was smaller but stronger, more honest. And I had learned something important, something vital during that tumultuous time. Sometimes the hardest, most courageous thing to do is to let go. To let go of the people who betray you, who deceive you, who try to diminish your light. To let go of the illusion of what you thought your family was or should be. But as a mother, I knew that sometimes to protect your children, to protect your own peace, you have to be the one to break the chains of toxicity. And that's what I did. Not just for me, but for my son, for my daughter, for the future of our family. Because in the end, we are the ones who get to choose the truth. We live by the people we allow into our sacred spaces. Sometimes the truth isn't about shouting it from the rooftops. It's about quietly, deliberately laying it down in front of the people who need to see it, whose eyes have been clouded by deception. And when they do, when they finally see the unvarnished truth, you can watch them make the decision to walk away from the lies and into a better, brighter, more honest future. A mother's love is always protective, always fundamentally forgiving in its core, but it should never be willfully blind. When betrayal comes from the very people we trust the most, the people we have welcomed into our hearts and homes, it's not just the loss of trust that inflicts the deepest wound. It's the painful realization that we have to let go of what we thought was family, what we hoped could be. But in the end, truth, however difficult to unearth and confront, always has a way of setting us free.